Hello and welcome to another edition of the programme Let's Talk. My name's Simon Baldock and this is a show where we speak to people who live here on the Costa Blanca and have got interesting stories to tell. Today we have two authors who have written very different books. Coming up in the second part, Nick Morton, who's written about a private investigator who is both Spanish and English. That's in the second part of today's show. But my first guest is Martin James, and Martin has written a book. It's called Safe As, and it's about, or based on, some horrific experiences that he had during his time as a child. Martin, thanks for coming in and chatting to us. We'll talk about the book a bit later on, but you've had quite an interesting life growing up. You've dabbled in drugs for one thing. Tell us about that.
Well, that was definitely a bad experience from looking at it from there in my point of life. But at the time, it was purely and utterly for me to be able to change the way my head was working, what I was remembering. And I just found that taking drugs was to get away from that, and it worked solely for me. I didn't think about it at all.
Yeah, it's your experiences as a child from the age of 5 that has really shaped your life. Before that though, where did you grow up?
I grew up in South London.
Oh right.
I come out of Bromley area, Orpington, North Kent, it's all bordering on South London area. Went to school in London and found being away from home so much easier to do around there because everything's so busy.
Yeah. Let's take you back to when you're 5 years of age and a rather horrific experience which really, as I said earlier, shaped your life. Tell us what happened.
Well, I was 5 years of age when my father took a turn for the worst in his health. And at the same sort of time, my mother's brother was having difficulties within his own marriage, or his second marriage, and he came to live with us. It was about a month into it after my father took a real bad turn. He was in hospital all the time, so my mum wasn't there. So my uncle effectively was looking after the family.
Yeah.
And just sadly enough for me, he took more of an interest in me than he did to my two sisters.
He raped you?
Yeah, he did, yeah. It started coming into the bedroom, giving me drinks, hot milk, cold milk, biscuits and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then one particular night he raped me. And he did so then for another 3 years.
Being a 5-year-old boy, did you know what was happening to you?
No, not really. I knew it hurt. I was very scared. For any 5-year-old, looking at a grown man is quite a mountain of a man. And I still remember that image now of him being such an enormous man. There's the old cliche of that his hands were as big as coal shovels, and I really do remember him being a very big man, and very terrifying, very terrifying. He wasn't nice to me in any way, shape or form.
But when he wasn't abusing you, during the day, was he a different person?
No.
No?
No, I was frightened of him.
Yeah.
So of course if he walked into a room I would very quickly walk out, but it wasn't very often that I wasn't in my bedroom.
Yeah.
I found solace in my bedroom. I wanted to be there all the time with the door shut, sitting in there, and I really do remember playing with kids' toys like toy cars, and for when I was a child Action Man was quite a relevant thing.
Yeah.
But I remember all of them being broken in some way. There was no colour. It was all destructive. When I think back now and I look at the psychological side of it now, it was having a massive effect on me then, even as a young boy.
Are you an only child?
No, I'm not, no.
So was he abusing other children in the family?
We didn't know at the time. I found out about 7 years ago that he raped his first wife's and his own daughters, which is why he got kicked out.
Yeah.
Which is why he was then living in the house. And I truly believed at some point that perhaps someone in my family knew. I mean, he was very, very close to my mother, his sister. Very, very close. And I truly believed that she knew. But of course, it didn't come out till later in years because people weren't talking about it. Two of my cousins are no longer with us as a result of him raping them, and they couldn't live with it.
They committed suicide?
They did, yeah.
Wow. So his wife knew what was going on. She threw him out knowing that he was coming to live with you.
Yeah.
And she never said anything?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
Gee whiz. This must have caused a huge rift in your family.
Massive. I mean, I've never spoken to any of them particularly. I don't really like any of them. On one occasion, I can actually remember, it was only about a year before we came to Spain. I phoned my dad's brother for help. I was having a real bad time of it. And I was very close to my dad's brother. And his words to me were, get over it, you might even get used to it one day.
Gee.
And I read from that, what did you think I'm going to just continue with this? Is it a family trait? This goes on in the family? Because if that's the family that I'm in, I want nothing more to do with it.
Yeah.
Hence, we moved to Spain, moved away.
So the abuse carried on for how many years?
3 years.
For 3 years. Why did it stop?
He moved out.
Simple as that.
He moved out. And I can remember where he moved to Erith. And I can really remember where he lived now. And my parents used to go there on a regular basis, and I would scream and do everything I could to not go, so that I didn't have to keep being around this person. And of course, a troublesome young boy, always in trouble at school. I mean, at primary school, I was kicked out of primary school twice, threatened to be expelled completely, and now I know it was all for attention. I was crying for help, but I didn't really know how to get the help I needed, because it's not every day you can turn around and say to somebody, "Hey, that guy's abusing me over there." And adults don't tend to believe, because it was a hidden taboo thing. Yeah, they don't want to admit it happening.
And especially back then as well, because it's not widely publicised like it is nowadays.
No, that's right. That's right. I mean, now it's a fantastic thing. Through my own experiences, I'm able to help other people express their feelings by talking to them. And with what I've done now with the book and everything, I'm talking to so many people, women and men alike, that have been for a similar experience, but they don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have an outside voice when they're having a bad day, when they want to cry, when they want to scream. They pick up my phone, which I'm more than happy for that. I love that, because it helps me as well. Yeah. Because I can do the same in return. It's a good way of venting, and it enables you to try and bring a bit of colour back into your life, because at the moment, without that, your life is very black and white.
We should stress that your uncle is now dead.
Yes, he is.
But he was never brought to justice for this.
No, never. And I'm very grateful that he's dead before I became a man.
Yeah.
I held a lot of hatred and anger. I held an awful lot of hatred and anger towards him, which in turn I took out on the rest of the world. Anybody I met, friends, people I didn't know. So me releasing it by writing about it has been a fantastic therapy for me.
And one of the ways that you escaped from it was getting into drugs.
Yeah, heavily.
This was with your first wife, was it?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah, and we're talking heavy drugs here.
Oh, yeah, we are, yeah.
Yeah. So you were an addict?
Yes, oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, I think in the end I was using about £1,000 worth of cocaine a week.
Gee whiz.
I mean, I would get up in the morning and I would have a line before getting out of bed.
Wow.
Just to start my day. And it became very habitual. I wouldn't go anywhere unless I had cocaine on me.
Yeah.
And I never felt... I see people, young children around on it today, and I use the term children because I think that you are still children if you're believing that's the way of life. I see them around on it now, and I was never like that. And I used to joke, a very good friend of mine, Peter, I used to joke with him, and he used to say, "Mark, why don't you stop it?" Because all my friends knew, but it wasn't a party drug for me. It was a way of life. And all my friends used to say, "Martin, why don't you stop it?" And I used to say, quite openly, the world ain't ready for me without it.
Wow. How on earth did you fund that amount of cocaine a week?
I had 3 businesses, and basically I run them into the ground to fund it.
Wow.
A few of my friends would, "Could I buy a little bit from you, Martin?" Yeah, of course you can. That would help fund a little bit more for me. It wasn't something I was particularly keen for, because obviously taking it yourself and distributing it is they're completely different avenues to go down. So that wasn't something I really wanted to get into. But slowly over the years, more of my friends would realise the quality of the drug I had, and they wouldn't want to buy some off me. So I sort of ended up being a drug pusher to fund my own.
Yeah.
And then one day I just decided that this was killing me, it was killing my life. I'd lost virtually everything. And through blindness of the drugs, I wasn't in a position to be able to help myself out because I'd let it go too far. It was then that we decided that we had to do something about this, had to get off the drugs, and I'm happy to say that I've been clean now for 5 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. And it's the best feeling in the world, to know you're clean, to know that you don't want to do anything to do with drugs. I don't even want to associate with people with drugs, which is hard, because a lot of my friends smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be with them. I don't want to be around them. I've got one particular friend, and he's always saying, no, 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 I don't. And I've only got to look at him and I go, don't even know why you're bothering, I've
like
been there.
People who pretend they don't smoke, you can always smell it on
What's
them.
the point?
Yeah,
if you're doing it, just be upfront and say so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel better for it now. It's a lot easier.
What's the relationship like with your mum now?
Very strained. Very, very strained. I have to allow her in my life for my children's sake. Having 4 children, they have to know who she is. I can't, in my own mind, I can't actually sit down and have a conversation about her and my children not know who I'm talking about. Photos aren't enough. They've got to realise who this person is. And they don't particularly get on well with her either. Right. Because they see the upset that she brings with her.
Do they know about the history?
My son does. My son's read the book.
Yeah.
I found it quite distressing that he read it, but he wanted to. And we've got closer as a result of that. I mean, he's 15 this Christmas.
Yeah.
We've got closer as a result of that. My 2 daughters, 8 and 6, they're too young.
Bit young, yeah.
They're too young to understand any of it. And if they did, I'd be horrified. But they will know about it. And more importantly for me, they need to know who this person is, because every time she comes to the house, which I didn't see her for 2 years, we was in Spain for 2 years before she even knew I'd moved. I've got no interest.
Yeah.
No interest, but I have to have some contact there so that my kids can see this person and understand why I don't like her. And they see it every time she comes. I'm happy to be out of the house all the time.
I know you're very open about talking about all this. It gets a bit more difficult when you discuss telling your father what happened.
Yeah.
Just walk us through that.
He was a very ill man. He was somebody I worked with on a daily basis. So we didn't just have a relationship as friends or work colleagues. We was more like brothers. But through the hatred towards my mother I've had held all my life, my dad had to take her side at some point.
Yeah.
They chose to be together when they were young, and they built a life together. Well, through one thing and another, we had a big row, and I said some awful things to my mum in front of my father, and my father disowned me from that moment.
Right.
Well, that went on for a couple of years, and then I got a phone call from one of my sisters telling me that he was on the door waiting for God to let him through. If you don't get it, if you don't sort this out, you'll never forgive yourself. And I think perhaps, she might have been right. So I arranged to go out for a drink with him. We went to a pub in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the country, big roaring fire, a couple of pints of John Smith's. And I can't hold it back. If I need to know something, I need to know. Yeah. And I just asked him outright. And the look on his face.
That told you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he didn't know. He stuttered. He really did find it a struggle to utter the words. And what made it worse for him was that the guy was his best friend.
Yeah.
It killed him. Because it would do as a man.
And he did die shortly afterwards?
Yeah, 4 months.
4 months afterwards. And you think that might have contributed in some way?
I think he gave up.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd been a fighter all his life. I mean, they cut one of his legs off due to ill health and diabetes and that sort of stuff. And, he learned to walk again on a prosthetic leg. he was a fighter.
Yeah.
You know, and I do think that sort of sadness just enables your body just to go, do you know what?
Yeah.
Enough's enough. It'd be nice to think that when he met him on the other side, he battered him.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
On to happier things. You're now living in Spain.
Yeah.
And you have written this book, Safe As.
Yeah.
It's not your story, but it's a character that has lived through your experiences.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, what happened was we'd been here for a few months, and I decided I needed to write. I needed to vent this. I needed to tell my mum exactly how I felt and why. And how this affected me on a daily basis, from waking up in the middle of the night screaming to looking at somebody, looking at my child and thinking, what are you thinking? Because, you know, that's not particularly a friendly thing either. So I wrote a letter, and it was 40 pages of A4, both sides. And one day I just looked at it and I thought, what am I going to get from this?
Yeah.
Nothing. She's going to go, none of the questions that I'm asking her, she's going to answer. Because if she had, she would have answered them already. So I then realised that I was getting a therapy from this. So I just turned around to the wife and I said, Don, I'm going to write a book. And that was her reaction.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, once upon a time, you know, I wasn't particularly great at school. I was never there. So for me to suddenly decide I was going to write a novel was, for her, it was a shock. So I set about it. And 6 months later, I finished it. 73,000 words.
Gee.
And I aired every one of my problems, every one of my griefs that I struggle with on a daily basis, I now had on a paper.
Saved yourself a fortune in therapy.
Unreal,
Yeah.
unreal. So we then went through the stages of, what are we going to do with it? What do I do with it now? I didn't know. I'd never been in this industry before. What do I do with it? Well, 4 years later, I've had it self-published. I'm in the middle of a lawsuit with an agent in America who's taken lots of money from me with big promises and done nothing. But apparently this is what this guy does. So, but I'm not the only one that's been caught up in his net. So that's an experience I've learned, and that's obviously one that needs to be passed on. The book came out, and I wrote it third hand. I wanted it to be read as a story rather than my autobiography, because I'm not nobody famous. I'm just Martin.
Yeah.
So I created this as a completely fictional story, and I gave the main character my problems. And I gave you my drug abuse. I gave you my alcohol abuse. But more importantly, I also gave my family the same thing. So the family that Robert has in the book, some of the experiences that their father and their husband, Robert, gives them is what I've given mine through my problems.
Can people get the book?
They can buy it on virtually every online bookstore there is available.
Right.
There's a direct link in from my own website, which is martinjames.org. Author House is my publisher. It's the cheapest available on there.
Right.
Everywhere it's going for about £13 on Author House. Amazon is up for about 18.5, 19. But it's available everywhere. Brilliant. I mean, I've had fantastic success with my own website. It's been running now since the end of June, and we've had 16,000 hits so far.
Gee.
So it's getting the coverage. It's getting moving.
The book is called Safe As.
Yeah.
We'll put all the details on the bottom of the screen. Martin, it's been a delight talking to you. Thank you very much for sharing your story. I know it's not easy, but I'm sure people out there, who have been through the same sort of thing might have got a bit of help from it. Martin James, thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back very soon with some more Let's Talk.